the other thing that I roped you in was relationships. Now this was a big one for me because I'm married 10 years now, and I was married 10 years before, and then I had a 6 years, almost 7 year hiatus, and then met my wife and married her within 6 months. And people never thought I was ever going to get married again. But one of the things that I was studying consistently, and my great teacher was Dr. Phil. One of the things I was consistently over that period of me being on my own was this thing around what are the critical ingredients in relationships. Now you've got a program that talks about relationship matter, not purely just linked to relationships with partners, but across the board, whether it's siblings or corporate or any engagement that you. And I think it's critical because there's one thing that my wife and I got right from day one, and that is how we address each other, how we communicate with each other. People used to laugh at us because for a long time and thought it was one of those honeymoon things where the way I address my wife, I start off with love of my life, So everybody used to go around, love of my life, love of my life. It was all a big joke. Now, 10 years later, they're going, shucks, are you still keeping this up? But now it's become ingrained as a behavioral thing as opposed to a cognitive thing. Right? So tell me a little bit about the component of communication that you talk about in relationships matter.
Definitely. And I mean, thank you so much for sharing your wonderful story in terms of the last 10 years and how it's really progressed and it's really stayed strong. And that's amazing. So in terms of the Relationships Matters course, what we're really looking at here is building self-awareness around how we engage in our relationships and how others are responding to us in turn. And looking at that self-leadership aspect of empowerment and saying, I own my behavior and I also own the fact that I can change my behavior. And that it's yes, my behavior is a reflection of me, but I can change my behavior to express myself more fully and authentically to the world and to other people. So I think that's really like we're looking at those kinds of skills and doing the self-work. Like, I think this course is really looking at those kinds of people who really have that sense of, I'm feeling kind of bugged. Like there's something happening in my relationships where people aren't responding to me in the way I want, and I'm not responding to people in the way I would like to. And for those individuals who are in a space in their lives where, you know what, they just feel like, I want to change and I want to take the challenge on and I want to challenge my beliefs around how I communicate with others and really move forward in a different way in my life, kind of thing. And so we're really looking at those three aspects. And what we go through in all of that is really setting your intention when you're talking to people and being mindful of your upbringing, your culture, society, and looking at how that really impacts the way we are communicating currently, and having to then almost go through that healing process sometimes, because some of those experiences as a young child might have been quite traumatic, and going through that healing process so that we can go forward and really interact interpersonally in a more authentic and vulnerable way, which is going to open up that need for connection and that desire to really be connected to other human beings. So, in a nutshell, that's really what it is, but we go through a lot more.
Yeah, it's a skill as well. People underestimate that communication is a skill. We're not talking about talking. We can all talk, but how do you communicate? How do you get your message across? And it is an interesting, and particularly if you're trying to get your message across in a manner in which there's a certain kind of probable response that you're looking for. I mean, there was a technique I learned the other day. Can't remember. I think it was. I can't remember if it was Stephen Covey with the 7 Habits. Anyway, somewhere I learned it, and even that, I'm going through that book again, and just what he talks about in terms of paradigm shifts in how you communicate and how you interact with others is monstrous. You know, and he uses an example of how they were trying to, you know, their son who was not necessarily performing at some particular level, how they were trying to, you know, ingrain a different sort of behavior. And it then turned out that it wasn't about the son, it was about how them were communicating across what they needed. So they needed to go back and introspect about themselves. And that for me, I think is a major first step in communication, is to reflect within yourself. And I'm by no means anyway, I'm probably, if I was to give myself, I probably just pass. I'm probably like at 51% now, right? Where I was coming, but that's, you got to know.
No ways, really? I think you could rate yourself higher on the scale.
I was coming from, and the more I read about it, the more, you know, when you know, Brené Brown's book on, you know, courageous leadership, this ability, I think when you categorize it, so if you say within, you know, your relationship, your spousal relationship, it's one thing, but you just said something that's important. Your authentic self pitching up everywhere, right? Even in the work environment. And up until 2 years ago, my authentic self did not pitch up in the work environment in terms of voice, in terms of my intentionality of communication. So, no, I'm still a work in progress. I'm 53 and I've just crossed 51%. So at some point I might even catch up with my own age.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is I think a lot of us have these sort of barriers in terms of the way we think about a professional relationship, a family relationship, a friendship. And really you can apply these skills in all these relationships, because if you do that, if you have that willingness to dig deep and introspect about exactly what you're saying, communication, not talking, you can really apply these skills to all of those relationships and really open that up to communicating more effectively. And it's really also about getting to understand, what are my needs, what are my values when I'm trying to get through to this person, and looking at those really deeply. And, you know, with the companion guide that's added into the course, what's great about that is that person can then sit in their own private time and really go through it in the form of a journal, where they are really addressing their hopes and their dreams within that communication space, and how do they go about it. And then looking at setting up healthy boundaries, because without boundaries we cannot give. And that's really what you're doing in communication as well, is you're giving of yourself in some way to get your message across. So I'm really looking forward to having people join the course and dig deep with us. I think it's going to be amazing.
No, I think it's going to be fantastic. And I like the conversation about boundaries. Look, on the boundaries one, I give myself probably 98%. The problem with my boundaries is that I've got to look at them and go, okay, Vic, a little too high, just bring them down a little bit. Let people allow people to come in. And the other one I think that's critical for me, and it was a conversation I was having with a friend of mine this past weekend, is about this thing of saying I'm sorry. You know, as South Africans, we struggle to say I'm sorry, right? And to but I'm sorry, it doesn't mean you have to be. It doesn't mean you have to be wrong to say I'm sorry. So a couple of these incidences that have happened in news and media, with people saying certain things, or people, you know, and then them having to come to explain themselves, and the explanations are spot on. But I think the quick kill of everything is to just say, look, I hear what you're saying, and I can appreciate that this perspective is so important to you, and I'm sorry that it may have come across to affect what is important to you. Boom. End of story.
Definitely.
Now, I can do that when I'm just saying it in general to you. I'm not very good at it. But it's something I want to learn. I want to, you know, there needs to be a ratio to hi every day and I'm sorry. You got to end the day with having said I'm sorry, because somewhere and somehow, hopefully not every day, but at some point, something that you've said might have hurt, or, you know, and even just going up to somebody and saying, if there's anything that I've said or done in the last few weeks that hurt you and you haven't said it back to me, I'm sorry. More I'm sorries. Let's just say we're sorry. Politicians, say,
great.
just say I'm sorry. That's it.
And
You know,
that's
we got
great. It really is. Yeah. But also saying sorry in the right context, because I do believe as South Africans, we've been raised to say, I'm sorry. So even when you're walking past someone and you may nudge them by mistake, we say, I'm sorry, as opposed to excuse me or pardon me. Um,
yeah,
and
yeah.
so
Well,
really
that's a good,
using I'm sorry in the right context.
it's right, really good. Yeah, that's a valid point.
Mm.
Hey,
And
this is brilliant. So no, well, thank you, Stacey. Yeah, I thought let's have a wee chat about this in the age
yes.
of load shedding. And I thought let's not do it, because it's important that we do it. And yeah, so thank you for that. Thank you for doing.
Mm.
Thank you for coming through. And let me.
Thank you.
Well, we got the generator running, but
Okay.
my wife keeps saying we need a bigger generator, and I said no, we do need it.
Oh, oh, one last thing. When you spoke about boundaries, when you talked
Yeah,
about how high your boundary is, I
yeah,
think we
yeah,
need
yeah.
to look at whether that's a barrier or a boundary.
Uh,
And I think we go deeper into that in the course in terms of it
that's,
possibly could be a barrier as opposed to a healthy boundary. So
yeah,
we can
I will
definitely
not
look at that.
a little bit and go. Possibly there's a few the boundaries got to a certain point, and then barriers were now added on top of that. So and yeah, it's really about it's been, 2020 was a very interesting year, and my wife and I were just saying, where are our boundaries, but we never use the word barriers, and that's a very descriptive word, and I think also it's about, within communication, just understanding and being empathetic to others, because we're not all at the same point, we're not all in the same place. Just because I say it loud or consecutively enough doesn't mean I've drummed it into you. And we need, and as parents, Stacey, we need to be like that. We need to be like that with our young ones, because we're either overprotective, or we let them go and wonder why they've tripped and fallen. So yeah, I think just understanding the principles of communication and the importance of relationships and how they matter, I think is going to be great. So I'm looking forward to it, and thank you for
Me
that.
too. And thank you for having me on the podcast today. It was lovely
Fantastic.
chatting.
Right, we'll catch up again on the
Chat soon.
days. Yeah.
Definitely. All right. Bye,
Uh,
Vic.
prepare,
Thanks for.
prepare yourself. Get some candles ready. Heading is heading in your direction.
Okay, great. We are ready. We got our candles.
Cool. Cheers.
Bye, Vic. Cheers.
Bye.
Have a
Bye,
good
Steve.
evening.
You too.